A Planet's Ransom, Chapter 28, In Dire Distress. When I did open my eyes again, I decided Mitch's face was a definite improvement on what I'd seen before, as was the fact the boys had put their clothes back on. Hey, Mitch said, shaking me by the shoulder. Hey, come on, you know what to do next, right? Yeah, I managed, and then sat up so I could wipe the drool from my chin. Yeah, we break the jammer and send a message to the protectors. And you know how to do that, right? Yeah, I said, and tried to stand up. I'm pretty sure I would have fallen down again if Mitch hadn't wrapped an arm around my shoulders and pulled me to my feet, and I knew there was no way I would have made it to the comm center without his support. The dead Evernatch was nowhere to be seen, and that was when I realized what those drag marks meant leading to the door. Heavens knew how we'd managed to miss the comms equipment. I found the jammer tucked into the leg space beneath the communications console. Break that, I said, but Mitch leant down and picked it up. Or we could just turn it off, he said. You never know when one might come in handy. I was feeling too sick to argue with him. Fine. It took him a couple of goes, but he finally turned it off. Power unit, I said, and turned back to the comms array while he worked it out. How do I send a message to the protectors? I asked, and watched as the information scrolled across the visor in front of my eyes. Stop, I said, and the data stopped scrolling so I could follow Sierra's instruction, one step at a time. Got it, I added, moving my hands over the console and typing the message Sierra had dictated. I sat back when it was done and rested my hands in my lap. You get through? Mitch asked, and I rubbed my eyes and leant forward to look at the readouts. Let me see, I said, and then startled back from the array as the screen on the wall above it hummed to life. The Evernatch, staring out of it, looked far from impressed. Who are you? It demanded, just as the screen fragmented and a second Evernatch came into view. What are you doing there? It snarled, and I was rewarded by the look of sudden understanding that came across the first Evernatch's face. I reached out and tapped a simple set of commands that would have Sierra's message on auto-repeat, and then I pushed my chair away from the console. You opened up a party line, Mitch said, but I was already out of my seat and heading for the door. Help us, I called. The Heritage have attacked our keepers and hunted us. We call on the protectors for aid. Why aren't you running? Came from the second Evernatch in the view screen behind us, but I didn't stop. Why aren't you? From the first Evernatch might have come as a relief, but I had to get Sulin and Blossom out of their cell. I ran into the common room and came to a sudden stop. What's going on? Mitch wanted to know, stopping just behind me, but I just looked at the two girls sitting next to Davo, Taylor, and Saeed and pointed to the door. Out, I commanded, and headed for the door. To give Mitch his due, he didn't stop me, just looked at them as we passed. You heard her. Move. And they moved. I kept running until we hit the tree line, and then I ran some more. I didn't stop until I found myself a dense cluster of rock I could hide behind, and then I crouched behind it and pulled my knees up to my chest so I could wrap my arms around them. I saw the others come and crouch down with me and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. What was all that about? Mitch asked. The others didn't say anything, even though I could see the same question written on their faces. I took a couple of deep breaths and I said, home in Evernatch, and then Sierva and East. I watched as the corresponding points came up on the map in my display, and then I closed my eyes. 2 minutes, I said, and then opened my eyes and looked at my friends. I called the protectors, I said, but I'm not sure if they answered. I am sure the Heritage came on the line. But why did we have to run? Trust her to start questioning my judgment the minute things got dicey. I looked at her. How much do you want to bet that base can't be targeted from orbit? Or that they can't send something to blow it up before the protectors can reach us? From the expressions on their faces, none of them had thought of that. I decided to push the point home. Any of you want to be here when they decide to get rid of the evidence? That was met with a unanimous no. Good. I reached out and used Mitch's shoulder to steady myself as I pushed myself to my feet. Because we've got to get to Sirva and the others and see if we can save them. I took a few steps in the direction of the dots showing in my visor, but none of the others moved. I turned to look at them and caught the look on Blossom's face that said I was out of my mind. We have to try, I said, and started walking in the direction we had to go. At first I heard nothing behind me, and then one of them moved. That movement was followed by others, so I kept moving. It wasn't easy. I was aching in muscles I hadn't known I had, and that was saying something. I thought all the training we'd done on board the alien ship had covered everything. I hadn't thought that there were any muscles I didn't know about. It didn't matter. I'd done what I said I would. I'd saved my friends, and I'd sent Sierra's message. Now it was time I kept my promise to my keeper. I could only hope I wasn't too late. I tried to pick up the pace and discovered I couldn't. Apparently, I had limits. That didn't stop me, though. What stopped me was Mitch's hand on my shoulder. Laurie, it's too late. I tried to shrug his hand away, but he didn't let go. Laurie. I tried to keep walking, but he spun me around. Stop. I opened my mouth to argue and looked into his face. My eyes met such a look of compassion that I felt my determination crumbling, felt an overwhelming wave of sadness roll over me. We have to at least try, I said. It was supposed to come out all firm and all leader like, but all I managed was a whisper as the first tears started to fall. Mitch didn't say anything, just pulled me tight against his chest and wrapped his arms around me as I started to cry. Even as I tried not to, I cried. I wanted to pull away from him, but I couldn't. I couldn't find the strength, either of will or body. I knew I had to go for Siva, and I knew it was too late. But I had to hope. That was all that had kept me going over the last few days. That and the idea that someone would come. I just wanted Siva to be alive when they did. I had managed to get the tears under control when I heard a distant boom. It was followed by a second boom, and then a third. I lifted my face and half turned in Mitch's arms. What was that? Even as I asked it, something flew overhead. It was going in the direction that my visor said was the right way to find home. Maybe Siva would be all right after all. A second something flew overhead, heading toward the Heritage Base. This time I got to see what it was, even if I didn't recognize the exact make of shuttle. This one was bigger, for a start, and looked like it had. Are those guns? Blossom echoed my thought. Are they friendly? Taylor's question was more practical. Do we want to wait here and find out? Mitch. I shook my head. We could all go hide out at Sue Lynn's. Davo. I looked past Mitch's shoulder and nodded. Let's do that, I said. Give ourselves a breather. They know how to contact us, right? And on that, we were all agreed. Right. We turned and began walking in the direction of Sue Lynn's hidden cave. It meant we'd be out overnight, but with the heritage gone, I guess we all figured we could get there. What can I say? None of us were thinking straight. We just wanted to get away. The Ivanach had other plans. We'd gone maybe 100 yards before we heard the sound of hoverbikes. They were a little distant, but I didn't want to bet they wouldn't get a lot closer. Over here, I said, pointing to a thick stand of trees. The trees covered the base of a hill, and I figured there'd be enough rocky outcrops and thick bushes that the bikes wouldn't be able to follow us. I hadn't figured on being met at the top of the hill by a shuttle load of Ivanach in space armor. We came out of the tree line pretty tired by the steep climb and having to dodge around boulders and push our way through bushes. I don't think any of us thought of looking for danger ahead of us. We all thought we'd left it behind us, in the valley. The sight of the shuttle sitting not 10 yards from where we'd emerged was entirely unexpected, but it was the Ivanach soldiers that grabbed our attention. Mitch and I came out of the trees together. We had our arms around each other's shoulders, but I was the one that needed support. Apparently, I can't run all day and then fight a battle and then run all night. Who knew? Sue Lynn and Davo were also travelling pretty close together, with Blossom tagging along behind and Taylor and Saeed keeping each other company off to the other side of Mitch and me. We all stopped as the Ivanach raised their rifles to their shoulders and aimed them at us. Mitch swore, and so did I, and both Taylor and Davo dropped the same unforgivable word. Sue Lynn and Blossom proved to be just as potty-mouthed as the rest of us, but Saeed said something in another language that I didn't understand, even if I'm dead certain it was just as rude. Stop. The order came in Ivanach, and we all kind of looked around to see which of us had moved. Hands up. Yeah, we could do that. Mitch and I raised one hand properly, but we sort of just flapped the ones we had wrapped around each other's shoulders. I was really glad Mitch had decided not to let me go because I was pretty sure I would have fallen over without him. The Evenatch came forward in pairs so that there were two of them for every one of us. As we were approached, I looked at Mitch and then I looked at them. Tell me you're not Heritage, I said, and we backed up a step. On either side of us, the others lifted their heads and also backed up. The rifles snapped up again. Stop! This time, we backed up another step. We're not Heritage, and their leader made the word sound like a curse. I relaxed then, standing still so they could approach and letting them take the rifle I still had slung around my neck. I wasn't so happy when they snapped a pair of restraints over my wrists, but I didn't feel like arguing. If they weren't Heritage, they had to be Protectors, right? Which reminded me, did you get to Sierra in time? I asked. But my question was met by blank stares. Please, I pressed, but my only answer was to have one wrap a firm, clawed hand around my bicep and guide me into the shuttle. We were separated then, each of us flanked by two Evenats who had brought us in, and we sat in separate rows facing forward. I really missed the feel of Mitch by my side, but I knew he was sitting right behind me. I'd had only one question addressed to me before being put in the very front row. You are Laurie Canavis? My affirmative answer earned me an assessing stare and an even tighter grip on the arm. My reputation had preceded me. Whatever. To my surprise, the shuttle didn't take us back to the Heritage Base, nor did it take us to my own pod or any of the others. It flew us direct to the keeper's home, where we were offloaded in front of a domed building scarred by fire and marked by holes. I stopped the minute I saw it, feeling a lump form in my throat. The Evenatch assigned to me did not let me stand still for long, though. They led me forward through a gaping hole where the doors might once have sealed the base tight, and then through corridors and rooms where our keepers had been hunted and slaughtered and left to lie. Only they weren't left now. Sometime between when the first shuttles flew over us and our capture, the keepers' bodies had been gathered and laid out in the room that might have once served as their common room. I knew the instant I saw Sierva and pulled free of my escort to run to his side. Bound hands or no, I reached out and laid my palms against his cheeks, a huge sob tearing itself free of my chest as I looked down into his face. I might have only seen him on screen once, but his voice had guided me through my arrival and my first encounter with the Heritage, and it had kept me safe and sane for as long as I had heard it. I stood beside his body and wept, stroking my fingers over his cheeks and then laying my palms on either side of his face. When one of the Evenatch came alongside me and laid his arm across my shoulders, I resisted the gentle pressure that would have had me turn away. It's not fair, I said as I wept. It shouldn't have happened. Come. No. I promised I'd come for him. I promised, and then I didn't. That last bit came out as a wail. I couldn't save them. This time the arm tightened around me, turning me away from Sierva's body to pull me tight against an armored Evenatch chest. The Evenatch's voice sounded rougher than usual when it replied. You tried. He knew that, and it was enough. He wouldn't leave when I told him to. I whimpered, my words muffled by his arm and the body armor he wore. That startled the laugh out of him. You ordered him to leave. And I nodded, even though I didn't look up. I'd done everything he said. I was finding the others. I told him to get out so that, so that they didn't. And I burst into tears all over again. So he put you in charge. I nodded again. It's my fault. I couldn't get him to leave. The Evenatch wrapped his other arm around me then, making odd hissing noises as it patted my back. In the background, I heard footsteps and lowered voices as the others were ushered from the room, but I was too busy crying to care. When my sobs had subsided, the Evenatch turned me about and led me back through the complex. The others are waiting, it said, and the one called Mitch is particularly worried about you. I followed, trying to wipe my eyes on my sleeve and to dab at my nose so it wouldn't run. Along the way, someone pushed some paper towel into my hand so I could blow my nose. So I stopped and did that, relieved to be allowed to clean up and recover just a little bit before I faced the others outside.